All right, let's dive right in. We're going to talk about something that really gets to the core of our legal system. I mean, what happens when a court order, something you think is set in stone, just isn't?
I want you to picture this, a judge's ruling. It feels solid, right? Legally binding. But what if the whole thing was built on a lie? What if the facts the judge based the decision on were completely made up? It's a wild thought, and believe me, the answer changes everything.
Okay, so here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll hit the main idea, what we're calling the crack in the foundation. Then we'll get into the nitty-gritty of void versus voidable, super important. After that, we'll look at the domino effect, how jurisdiction can just crumble, the fact that there's no time limit on justice here, and wrap it all up with why this whole principle is so critical. All right, let's jump into our first section, a crack in the foundation. This is where we lay out the core principle of a void judgment.
So, a fraudulent judgment, it's pretty much what you'd think, right? A court order that was gotten through some kind of deception. But here is the absolute key takeaway from the source material. The law doesn't treat this like some little error you can just fix. Nope. It sees it as a legal nullity. In other words, it's like it never even existed. The easiest way to think about it is like this. Imagine a house built on thin air. No foundation. It doesn't matter how fancy the paint job is or how great the windows are. The whole thing is fundamentally bogus. It can't stand. That's exactly what a fraudulent judgment is. It has zero legal ground to stand on.
Okay, that idea brings us to a really, really important legal distinction. You've got to understand the difference between something being void and something being voidable. Now, this is huge. See, a lot of legal mistakes can make a ruling voidable. That means it's kind of valid until someone challenges it and gets it overturned. But, and the sources are crystal clear on this, a judgment based on fraud is simply void. It was never valid to begin with. You can't patch it up. You can't make it right. It's basically a legal ghost. It was never really there. So, okay, if a judgment is void from the very beginning, what does that actually mean, like in the real world? Well, that leads us straight to the domino effect of fraud. The consequences are massive. Basically, a fraudulent judgment has no power at all. The sources say it's a nullity from the beginning and has, and I'm quoting here, no legally standing whatsoever. That means no court on earth can enforce it. It can't create rights, it can't take away rights, and get this, no one can even use it as a legal defense. It's just dead on arrival, legally useless. And this is where it gets really wild. The principle is so strong that, according to the source material, anyone, and I mean anyone, who tries to execute one of these judgments is legally considered a trespasser. Just think about that for a second. That's an unbelievably strong statement. You're not just enforcing a bad ruling. The law says you are acting with zero legal authority. You're completely out of bounds. Okay, so we've got the theory down. Now let's see how this whole thing crashes into one of the most fundamental parts of any court case, jurisdiction. You see, before any court can say anything about you, it needs to have power over you. That's a concept called personal jurisdiction. And this is not some minor legal detail. It's a fundamental right guaranteed by the Constitution's Due Process Clause. A court can't just decide to grab you from anywhere in the country and pull you into its case. So how does a court get that power? Well, there's a two-part test. First, you have to have what are called minimum contacts with that state. Basically, you had to have done something there on purpose. And second, because of those contacts, you could reasonably expect that you might have to show up in court there. It's all about making sure it's fair. Okay, now let's tie this back to fraud. The source material brings up a specific case from 2012 where this exact thing was the issue. The argument was that one side made false statements about the other person's connections to New Jersey just to get the case heard there. And if that's true, see where this is going? That lie would completely demolish the court's authority. The jurisdiction would crumble before the case even got started. Now, this all sounds pretty bad, right? Like a system that can be easily broken. But here's the thing. The law has a remedy that's just as powerful as the fraud itself. And the most amazing part, it has no expiration date. You know how most legal stuff has a strict deadline, a statute of limitations?
Well, forget about that here. A judgment that was born from fraud is always, and I mean always, vulnerable. The source material couldn't be clearer. It can be attacked at any time in any court. That weakness is permanent. I mean, just let that sink in for a minute. There is no statute of limitations. That tells you everything you need to know about how seriously the system takes this. This isn't just seen as one person tricking another. It's seen as an attack on the court itself, on the very idea of justice. And for that kind of offense, the clock never, ever runs out. And it gets even better. It's not just on the victim to raise the alarm. The sources point out that the court has a duty, a responsibility to correct a fraudulent judgment when it sees one. And the solution isn't to tweak it or edit it. The only proper action is to vacate it. That means to wipe it off the books, completely, as if it never happened.
Okay, let's pull back for the big picture. Why are the rules for this so absolute, so powerful? Why does this principle even matter?
There's an old legal saying that goes, fraud destroys everything it touches. And after what we've just gone through, you can see it's not just some fancy, dramatic phrase. It's literally the operating manual for the justice system. It's a critical, built-in safeguard.
At the end of the day, this is all about making sure that the court's power comes from truth and due process, not from lies and deception. Think about it. If you could get a court order with a lie, what would that order even be worth? The whole system would be a joke. So by making these judgments total nullities, the law is really just protecting its own integrity and our faith in it.
So, I'll leave you with this final thought to chew on. If a lie can reach back in time and completely vaporize a formal court judgment, what does that really tell us about the true source of legal authority? Something to think about. Thanks for joining me on this explainer.